Welcome to Bekaert's Government Contracting Podcast, where we discuss current government contracting trends, compliance matters, and best practices to guide federal contractors forward. I'm Sarah Tucker, Senior Manager with Bekaert, and with me today is Susan Moser, leader of Bekaert's Government Contracting Services Group. Today we are doing another part of our 8A series, taking a look at life beyond the 8A program. Thanks for joining me, Susan.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
To start off and set the base for this discussion, when does graduation occur? What period of time are we looking at?
Okay, so hopefully some of you have listened to our other podcasts about the 8A programs. We have lots of information on different phases, but the 8A program does have indefinite life. It is a 9-year program. It was an extra year, 10 years during COVID, but it's generally a 9-year program. But some companies do graduate early, and graduation can occur for a number of reasons. So the goal of the SBA with the 8A program is it is a business development program. So the SBA's goal for companies is that they will successfully graduate when they are sustainable and can have success outside of the 8A program. So sometimes companies graduate early, and that's because they really have completed that mission of the SBA, which is they are, capable of performing outside of the 8A program. And that's a bit of a subjective criteria. It can have, it could be, substantial profitability, sales trends where much of their revenue is not based on 8A program. There are, financial metrics in terms of net worth, working capital, comparison of an 8A business to other non-8A businesses, strength of the management experience, ability for a company to successfully compete. The SBA is not looking to kick companies out of the program early or to graduate them early unless they really don't feel like they really don't need the 8A program. So this isn't something that happens that often, but it certainly can happen. Some companies graduate early because they do grow fast and they do exceed their size standards. So every government contract has a NAICS code. The revenue-based size standards are based on a 5-year revenue average. And so sometimes companies graduate from the 8A program early because they've essentially outgrown the small business program. Another area where companies graduate early, and this is not a good thing, is because they fail to adhere to the eligibility tests. And so there are several metrics that need to be really monitored closely, and including excessive withdrawal, adjusted income for the owner. There is a personal net worth test. And so, unfortunately, some companies don't pay as much attention to that as they should and find themselves where they sometimes don't even realize that they've exceeded some of those limitations. So one of the things that we really encourage is for companies to really understand what those eligibility tests and to work with their accounting firm, because a lot of those are based on their tax return, to really understand and plan for those eligibility tests. Another area is sometimes companies voluntarily decide to graduate themselves. So they decide that they really don't need the 8A program. Either they haven't really utilized it and they don't want to kind of deal with the compliance requirements, or maybe they have used it, but they're getting to a point where it's really not needed for their business. And so companies can voluntarily graduate. They should send a notification to the SBA, but that can happen. And people ask you sometimes, well, do you think I should graduate early? The 8A program does have tremendous benefits throughout the 9 years, and if a company is still eligible, I don't generally recommend that they do voluntarily graduate earlier. Again, there are some things that we don't recommend that companies do while they're in the 8A program. I just had a situation occur this week where had a client that is looking to become an ESOP. They still have 2 years left in the 8A program. Generally, we don't recommend companies go through that process while they're in the 8A program. So that's something that they're evaluating now. So it really does depend, but we generally, like companies to try to take advantage of it and have success from the 8A program as long as they can. So maybe now, Sarah, do you want to talk a little bit about, planning for transition?
Yes, absolutely. So as Susan mentioned, the 8A program really does have a definite life, whether it be the 9 years or shorter. And the transition out of the 8A program is something that all companies are going to experience. And really, it is important to plan for that in order to be successful outside of the 8A program. So there's a number of different things that organizations can do in order to prepare for that inevitable transition. The first is really to seek to understand what changes will occur. What changes is the organization going to go through from being in the 8A program to being in a competitive bidding? That's probably one of the bigger changes. They're going to need to know the length of their contract backlog, to consider the indirect rate implications and the increased business development and administrative efforts that come with that transition and the competitive bidding process. Next really is to develop and implement a change for how the organization is going to go through those changes, making sure that you've got the right plan for the people and the processes, to ask for help to collaborate with experienced professionals and advisors who have seen other organizations go through this change or who have been through this change themselves. And then to look at the various exit strategies, whether it be a sale or a merger. And then some companies do choose to stay small and really specialize within a niche area. And that can have some really good opportunities as well. And so for that transition, making sure that you're focused on the quality of those opportunities, to really focus on what that specialty will be to become better and better experts within that area and to grow your expertise there. If you choose to stay small, you can still qualify as a small business even after graduating the 8A program. And some companies can spin off a division or a contract in order to stay small.
And Sarah, I'll just interject a little bit because, that used to not be a strategy that anyone wanted to talk about, but for some companies that really is the right decision. And so, if a company beyond the 8A program does think that they're going to have a better chance for success staying small, they really want to be intentional about that and make sure that they do focus on the right type of again, niche, lines of business or, profitable contracts. And so they want to be as intentional about that as if their, plan is to become, large and go through a sales transaction.
Absolutely. And kind of as you mentioned, that intentionality really is the key here, and that importance of really preparing. So as companies prepare for this transition, there are some kind of key considerations and characteristics that we see businesses that are successful after graduation. Having a solid relationship with business advisors, your bankers, your business coaches, etc., that really can advise you through that transition and as you continue to grow and continue your business outside of the 8A program. Next is reducing the dependence on those 8A contracts and exhibiting an ability to compete and win in that open and competitive market. Having a repertoire of solid past performance to rely on to compete in those contracts and to really win contracts going forward. And then an infrastructure that can handle the growth. A lot of companies, as they grow, they're relying on the systems that they had in place when they were small, and that sometimes isn't going to be the best strategy, but really being prepared for that growth. And then relationships with large prime contractors and using the mentor protege and joint venture programs that are out there having the right staff and making sure that you're hiring and maintaining the right people to do the right things, and then understanding the finances of your business. There's a number of things that we at Cherry Bekaert can help with that transition. Susan, what are kind of some of those that you've seen be
Yep.
successful?
First, a couple things I wanted to circle back on the mentor protege program. So we're big fans of the mentor protege program when done right, and we see lots of success for both large and small businesses. And so, you know, a lot of times we're advocating and encouraging small businesses and those in the 8A program to look for mentor protege arrangements where you're the protege and you have a good mentor, and we all know not all of them are. And so we've got a lot of content out there about the mentor protege program in particular. But as you are nearing graduation, you definitely want to look to flip that switch. So if you were previously in a mentor protege, but as a protege, as you are nearing the end of the 8A program, you definitely want to be looking for a mentor protege arrangement where you're the mentor, and ideally maybe with another 8A company. So that's a key area to look for. But a couple of things that we get involved with and help companies with during the transition in particular, and certainly things that we see. As we talked about, planning and successfully executing your first acquisition. M&A is really a key growth strategy for all different types of companies. It used to be, once you got to be, $100 million, that's when you looked at that either, doing an acquisition yourself or selling the company. And more companies, M&A can be a strategy, much earlier on, whether that's a tuck-in acquisition yourself or looking for maybe not a wholesale sale of the company, but if you still have small business contracts, maybe you need a minority interest can really help you achieve the growth that you might not otherwise be able to achieve on your own. So I think, thinking about acquisition strategies, both, acquiring and potentially getting outside investment is certainly something that looks that's important to do. I talked earlier about, mentoring younger 8A programs for post-graduation subcontracting. And I would say really, from day one of the 8A program, you should really get to know other 8A firms and mentor and encourage, relationships with newer 8A firms, because again, you can be the sub or you can be the prime, and one day it can change. And so it is important to have those relationships. And also just really thinking about post-graduation strategy, how much of your business will you be looking to subcontract to others, or how much of your 8A revenue do you need to replace with full and open revenue? One of the things Sarah mentioned earlier is about, being having the infrastructure from a business development standpoint. I mean, one of the things that we often don't see companies planning for enough is, bidding on some of these full and open vehicles. It is expensive. It's a much more rigorous process. It takes longer. You're going to oftentimes have to invest in outside BD resources, whether that's help with a technical proposal or orals presentation or, complex pricing strategies. A lot of companies don't really budget enough for some of those costs. So you need to look at that. Another thing companies a lot of times don't, how you compete as a small business is very different as a large business. You need to look at, your cost structure, your pricing, what are some of those additional system requirements that you're going to need to compete when you're fully full and open. Are you going to be CAS covered? When are you going to need to look at different business system requirements? So outside of just your accounting system, but is estimating and purchasing. Those are certainly all things that that companies that are moving out of the small business program need to be prepared to deal with. Another thing that we get involved with a lot is, generally while companies in the 8A program, they because of the requirements with the program, there's often not a lot of change in ownership. So because the individuals upon whom the eligibility is based have to always own more than 51% of the company, a lot of times there's not a lot of equity or option plans. But as the company gets ready to graduate, a lot of times, planning for executive compensation planning and different ways to incentivize and retain key talent. Those are all things that are really important for companies to consider as they are, looking to grow. And again, I don't want to say the shackles come off with the 8A program, but you don't have some of the requirements that you have during the program. Another kind of important aspect of that we help a lot of companies with is really the tax planning and some of the things that do go along with monetizing some of the success after the 8A program, because of some of the personal net worth requirements and withdrawal limitations. Oftentimes there is some wealth that is accumulated within the 8A program, and once you're outside of the program, you don't have as many of those restrictions. So it's really important to plan ahead for some of those, so that you do have a successful exit. And again, that can mean lots of different things. It could be I'm successfully exiting the 8A program, and I'm going to really focus on competing as a large business. That could be I'm successfully exiting the 8A program, but I still want to focus on small business contracts, and I can have good success doing that. Sometimes that means maybe the company is ready to, you don't want to sell. Maybe it's got a strong culture and a strong employee base, and you want to look at, some type of employee stock ownership, or, potentially a sale to either a minority interest or to a strategic or financial buyer. So a lot of different options, but I think the bottom line is those things don't happen without pre-planning and success. So I think those are, some of the main things that we wanted to talk about today of, life beyond the 8A program can be good. And we've got a lot of great examples with clients of ours that have done, really well after they have graduated from the 8A program.
Absolutely. That kind of taking the time to plan for the future is really beneficial here.
Yep.
Well, thank you all for joining us. I encourage you to check out the Cherry Bekaert website for additional guidance regarding the 8A program. There's several podcasts and articles. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us via email at smoser@cbh.com for Susan and sctucker@cbh.com for myself. And please join us again for our next podcast. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Bye-bye.